Velik Tarn had studied war for 60 cycles. He had watched the Crimson Legions of Altair burn worlds to ash. He had documented the silent killers of the Void Clans as they moved through enemy ships like ghosts. He had seen things that would break lesser minds, but nothing in his long career had prepared him for what he would witness aboard the human vessel called the Resolute. The assignment came from Corvani High Command. The humans had been fighting the Drethak Collective for 3 cycles now. The Drethak were brutal. They were strong. They had conquered 40 worlds and enslaved billions. Yet somehow, the humans were winning. High Command wanted to know why. Velik thought the assignment was a waste of his talents. Everyone in the galaxy knew about humans. They were soft creatures from a small blue world. They spent their short lives eating, breeding, and fighting among themselves. They had only joined the galactic community 200 cycles ago. What could they possibly teach the Corvani about war? Still, orders were orders. Velik boarded the human frigate at Station Gamma 7 and prepared himself for boredom. Captain Daniel Hayes met him at the airlock. The human was average in every way. Medium height. Brown hair going gray at the edges. Blue eyes that crinkled when he smiled. And he smiled a lot. That was the first thing Velik noticed about humans. They smiled at everything. "Welcome aboard the Resolute," Hayes said. He extended his hand in the human greeting ritual. "We're honored to have a Corvani observer with us." Velik touched his palm to the human's hand briefly. The skin was warm and soft. No scales. No protective plating. Just thin flesh over fragile bones. How did these creatures survive at all? "I am here to document your combat methods," Velik said. "I will stay out of your way." Hayes laughed. It was a strange sound, open and genuine. "You're not in anybody's way. Come on. I'll show you around and introduce you to the crew." The tour took 2 hours. Velik made careful notes on everything he observed. The ship was functional, but not impressive. Standard weapons. Standard shields. Standard engines. Nothing that explained human success against the Drethak. But the crew was strange. Very strange. In the mess hall, Velik watched humans sit together in groups. They talked loudly. They laughed. They touched each other constantly. A pat on the shoulder here. A hand on the arm there. One female put her head on a male's shoulder and closed her eyes, while he continued eating. Nobody seemed to think this was unusual. "Your crew is very close," Velik observed. Hayes nodded. "We've served together for 4 years. They're family. Family." Velik knew the word. It meant genetic relations. Parents and offspring. But these humans were not related by blood. He added this to his notes under the category of odd behaviors. He met Lieutenant Nina Vance in the tactical center. She was tall for a human female, with dark skin and eyes that missed nothing. She explained their battle systems with cold precision. Velik approved of her. She seemed professional. Sergeant Cole Bennett ran the Marine Division. He was built like a small tank, all muscle and scars. But when he introduced his squad, his voice went soft. He knew every soldier's name. He knew their hometowns. He knew about their families back on Earth. "This is Private Amy Dawson," Bennett said, gesturing to a young female who barely looked old enough to fight. "First deployment, but she's got good instincts." Dawson stood straighter under the praise. "Just trying to do my part, Sergeant." Velik noted her age. Humans sent their children to war. Another mark of their desperation. Perhaps, on his 3rd day aboard, everything changed. The Resolute was running patrol routes near the border when the distress signal came through. The communications officer, a nervous young male named Peter Chen, put it on the main speakers. "This is Colony Haven's Rest. We are under attack. Drethak warships. 3 of them. They're bombing civilian centers. Please help. They're killing everyone. Please." The voice dissolved into static and screams. Captain Hayes stood very still for a moment. The bridge went silent. Velik watched the humans' faces and saw something shift behind their eyes. The smiles disappeared. The easy posture changed. Even the air seemed to grow colder. "How far?" Hayes asked. 4 hours at maximum speed, Vance replied. Take us there. All ahead full. Sir, Vance said carefully. 3 Drethak warships against 1 frigate. The tactical odds are not in our favor. Hayes turned to look at her. His face was calm, but his eyes had changed. They were harder now. Older somehow. Those are civilians, Nina. Women. Children. What are the odds for them if we don't go? Vance nodded once. All ahead. Full. Setting intercept course. The ship hummed as the engines pushed to their limits. Crew members moved through the corridors with new purpose. No more laughter. No more casual touches. They checked weapons. They reviewed emergency procedures. They prepared for battle. Velik followed Bennett to the Marine barracks and watched the soldiers gear up. They moved in silence now. Focused. Professional. Private Dawson loaded her rifle with steady hands. Her young face showed no fear. Only determination. Bennett noticed Velik watching. You ever seen humans fight? Observer? I have reviewed combat footage. Bennett smiled, but it was not the warm smile Velik had seen before. This smile showed teeth. Footage doesn't capture it. Not really. You'll see. Velik returned to the bridge as the Resolute neared the colony. On the view screen, he could see the planet. Green and blue. Beautiful, and above it, 3 Drethak warships rained fire on the surface below. Captain Hayes stood at the center of the bridge. His crew surrounded him. They were waiting for orders. All hands, Hayes said into the ship-wide communicator. His voice was steady. This is the captain. We're going in to help those people. I won't lie to you. It's going to be hard. But we're not leaving them to die alone. Not today. Not ever. He paused. When he spoke again, his voice dropped to something almost gentle. Give them hell. The bridge erupted in a roar that made Velik step backward. Every human voice joined together in a sound that was part war cry and part something else. Something ancient. Something hungry. Velik looked at the humans around him. These soft, smiling creatures with their warm handshakes and their strange concept of family. They did not look soft anymore. He could not identify what he now saw in their eyes. But for the first time in 60 cycles of studying war, Velik Tarn felt something he had not felt since childhood. He felt afraid. The Resolute dove toward the Drethak formation like a hawk striking at wolves. Velik gripped his observation console and watched the humans work. What he saw made no tactical sense. Lieutenant Vance's fingers flew across her control panel. The ship twisted and rolled through space in patterns Velik had never seen documented in any military database. She was not following standard combat formations. She was improvising, creating new tactics in real time. Target the lead ship's engine array, Captain Hayes ordered. Force them to turn. Firing, Vance replied. The Resolute's weapons struck true. The lead Drethak warship shuddered and began to rotate, exposing its weaker underbelly. The second ship moved to cover its wounded ally. Exactly as Vance had predicted. Now hit the second ship's weapon ports. Both of them. 2 more strikes. 2 more hits. The second Drethak vessel lost half its forward guns in seconds. Velik stared at the tactical display. The humans were outgunned 3-1. They should have been destroyed in the first exchange. Instead, they had crippled 2 enemy ships in less than 4 minutes. How is this possible? He asked aloud. Vance glanced at him without stopping her work. The Drethak are strong. But they're predictable. They always protect their wounded. They always move in the same formations. We just have to be faster and smarter. The third Drethak warship finally responded. It broke from the planet and charged directly at the Resolute. Its weapons painted the human ship with targeting lasers. Brace for impact, Hayes called out. The hit came hard. The Resolute screamed as metal tore and systems failed. Velik was thrown from his seat. Warning alarms filled the bridge with noise. Red lights flashed everywhere. Hull breach on decks 4 and 7, someone shouted. Seal them. Keep fighting, Hayes ordered. Blood ran down his forehead from a cut, but he did not seem to notice. Vance, Give me a firing solution on that third ship. Working on it, sir. The battle continued. The Resolute took hit after hit. Velik watched crew members fall. He watched others drag the wounded to safety while still manning their stations. He watched a young officer die at his console. And he watched another human push the body aside and take over without hesitation. They did not retreat. They did not surrender. They kept fighting. After 20 minutes of brutal combat, the lead TerrorHFY ship exploded. Its engines had failed completely, and the Resolute had pounded it until the reactor went critical. The second ship was drifting dead in space, unable to maneuver, but the third ship was still coming, and the Resolute was badly wounded. "Captain," Vance said, "we can't take another direct assault. Shields are at 12%. We've lost main weapons." Hayes nodded slowly. He looked at the view screen where the TerrorHFY warship was turning for another attack run. Then he looked down at the planet below, where smoke still rose from the burning colony. "How many boarding pods do we have left?" The bridge went quiet. Velik saw the crew members exchange looks. They understood what their captain was suggesting. 6 pods, sir," Vance answered. "Enough for 40 Marines. Then we board them." Hayes turned to the communications station. "Bennett, prepare your people. We're taking that ship." Sergeant Bennett's voice came back immediately. "Already on it, Captain. We'll be ready in 5. Velik stood up from where he had fallen. "You cannot be serious. Boarding a TerrorHFY warship with 40 soldiers? The TerrorHFY are twice your size. They have claws that can tear through armor. This is suicide." Hayes looked at him with those strange human eyes. They were calm, almost peaceful. "Maybe, but those people down there don't have time for us to wait for backup. If we can take that ship, we can stop the bombardment. If we can stop the bombardment, some of them might live." He shrugged. "That's enough for me." Velik felt his understanding of humans shift. These were not desperate creatures fighting because they had no choice. They were choosing this. Choosing death for strangers they had never met. "I wish to accompany the boarding party," Velik heard himself say. "For observation purposes." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "It's going to be dangerous." "I understand. Then welcome aboard, observer. Stay behind the Marines." The boarding pods were cramped metal cylinders designed to punch through enemy hulls. Velik squeezed into one with Bennett's squad. 12 humans pressed together in the darkness, checking weapons and waiting. Nobody spoke at first. Then Private Dawson, the young soldier, started to hum. A simple melody. One by one, the other humans joined her. The humming became singing, words in a language Velik did not know. A song about home and courage and not being afraid. They were singing, flying toward death in a metal coffin. And they were singing. The pod hit the TerrorHFY ship with a crash that rattled Velik's bones. The front of the cylinder exploded outward. Bennett was the first through the breach, his rifle already firing. "Move, move, move." The Marines poured out behind him. Velik followed, keeping his head low like they had told him. The inside of the TerrorHFY ship was dark and hot. It smelled like blood and something worse. Velik heard screaming in the distance. TerrorHFY screaming. The first enemy appeared around a corner. It was massive. 3 meters tall. Covered in gray scales that could stop most weapons. Its claws were the length of Velik's forearm. Bennett did not hesitate. He fired 3 shots into the creature's eyes, the only weak point in its natural armor. The TerrorHFY fell. Bennett stepped over the body and kept moving. More TerrorHFY came. Many more. The corridor became a slaughter. But Velik noticed something strange. For every human that fell, 3 or 4 TerrorHFY died. The humans were smaller, weaker. They should have been crushed. But they fought like nothing Velik had ever seen. They covered each other. They moved as one unit. When a Marine fell, another would drag them to safety. While still shooting, when one ran out of ammunition, another would provide cover while they reloaded. And their faces. Velik could not stop looking at their faces. There was no fear there. No doubt. Only a terrible focus that made the TerrorHFY seem like the prey instead of the predators. Private Dawson saved his life twice. The first time, she pulled him behind cover when a Drethak threw a blade at his head. The second time, she killed an enemy that had flanked their position with 3 precise shots. "Stay close to me," she said. Her voice was steady despite the chaos around them. "We'll get through this." She was barely old enough to be called an adult. She was protecting him like he was the child. The squad pushed deeper into the ship. They were looking for the bridge. If they could take the bridge, they could stop the bombardment. Bennett paused at an intersection. He held up his fist. Everyone stopped. "Sergeant," one of the Marines whispered. "I hear something." "Sounds like crying?" Bennett listened. Then his face changed. Velik saw something dark pass through the human's eyes. "New plan," Bennett said quietly. "Follow me." They moved toward the sound. What they found made even Velik, who had seen horrors across 100 worlds, feel sick. A cargo hold, filled with cages. And in those cages were humans from the colony. Women, children, the elderly, packed together like animals. Some were wounded. Some were dead. Most were crying. They were prisoners, taken for the Drethak slave markets. Velik looked at the Marines around him. Something had changed in them. The focus in their eyes had become something else. Something colder. Something that made Velik want to step away. Bennett spoke into his communicator. His voice was flat and empty of emotion. "Captain, we found prisoners. Colonists. They're being held for slavery." Hayes responded immediately. "Get them out, Sergeant. Whatever it takes." Bennett smiled. But it was not a smile. It was a promise. "You heard the captain. No Drethak leaves this ship alive." The hunt began. Velik had studied predators his entire life. He had watched the great sand hunters of Corvin Prime stalk their prey for days before striking. He had documented the pack tactics of the Velith wolves that could bring down creatures 10 times their size. He thought he understood what it meant to be a predator. He was wrong. The humans did not fight like soldiers anymore. They moved through the Drethak ship like shadows. Silent. Patient. Deadly. Every corner became an ambush. Every corridor became a killing ground. Bennett split the squad into 3 teams. Each team took a different route through the ship. They communicated with hand signals and whispered words. The Drethak, for all their size and strength, could not keep track of them all. Velik stayed with Bennett's team. He watched the sergeant work with growing horror. A Drethak warrior emerged from a side passage. It never saw Bennett waiting in the darkness. The human's blade found the soft spot behind the creature's jaw and punched through to the brain. The Drethak died without making a sound. Bennett lowered the body to the floor and kept moving. "How do you do that?" Velik whispered. "They are twice your size." Bennett did not look back. Size doesn't matter in the dark. Skill does. Will does. Another Drethak appeared ahead. This one saw them. It opened its mouth to roar a warning. Private Dawson shot it through the throat before the sound could escape. The creature fell, clutching at the wound. Dawson put another round through its head to end its suffering. "Keep moving," she said. Her voice was cold. Professional. The young girl Velik had met on the Resolute was gone. Someone else had taken her place. They found more prisoners as they pushed deeper into the ship. Each discovery made the humans angrier, more focused, more dangerous. In one room, they found children. Human children. They were bruised and terrified, huddled together in a corner. A dead Drethak guard lay nearby. Killed by the first Marine through the door. Bennett knelt down to their level. His voice changed completely. Soft. Gentle. Like a different person. "Hey there, I'm Sergeant Bennett. We're here to help you. Nobody's going to hurt you anymore, okay?" A little girl, maybe 6 years old, reached out and touched his armor. "Are you a soldier?" "That's right. And soldiers protect people. That's our job." The girl started crying. Not from fear, Velik realized. From relief. Bennett assigned 2 Marines to guard the children. The rest of the squad continued the hunt. But now they moved even faster, even more ruthlessly. Velik struggled to keep up. His legs ached, his heart pounded in his chest. He was trained for observation, not combat. But the humans showed no signs of slowing down. They encountered a group of 8 HFY warriors in a wide corridor. The creatures had formed a defensive position, blocking the way to the bridge. They roared challenges and beat their claws against the walls. Bennett did not hesitate. He stepped into the open and fired. The Marines flowed out behind him in a practiced pattern. They moved like water, like a single organism with many bodies. The fight was brutal. Velik saw a Marine take a claw strike that opened his side from hip to shoulder. The human did not stop fighting. He killed 2 more HFY before collapsing. Another Marine dragged him to cover while Dawson provided suppressive fire. The HFY fell one by one. They were stronger. They were larger. But the humans simply refused to stop. Even wounded, even dying, they kept shooting. They kept fighting. When the last HFY dropped, Bennett checked on his wounded soldier. "How bad?" he asked. The Marine coughed blood. "Pretty bad, Sarge. But I'll make it. Just don't leave me behind." "Never." Bennett turned to 2 of his soldiers. "Carry him. We're almost to the bridge." They carried their wounded. Every single one. No matter how much it slowed them down. No matter how dangerous it made their advance. Velik noted this behavior carefully. It made no tactical sense. It would be more efficient to leave the dying and continue the mission. But humans, he was learning, did not think about efficiency when it came to their own. The bridge was heavily guarded. 12 HFY warriors stood between the humans and their objective. Among them was the ship's captain, a massive creature with golden scales and scars covering half its face. Bennett assessed the situation. His squad was down to 9 combat-effective soldiers. They were outnumbered, outmatched. "We go through them," he said, fast and hard. "Dawson, you're with me on the captain. Everyone else, keep the warriors busy." No one argued. No one suggested retreat. They simply checked their weapons and prepared to attack. "On my mark," Bennett said. He took a breath. 3, 2, 1, mark. The humans exploded into motion. Velik pressed himself against the wall and watched. It was chaos. Beautiful, terrible chaos. The HFY roared and slashed with their claws. The humans ducked and weaved, firing at close range. Bodies fell on both sides. The air filled with smoke and screaming. Bennett and Dawson reached the HFY captain. The creature swung its massive arm at Bennett. The sergeant dropped under the blow and fired upward into the captain's belly. The armor there was thick. The shots did not penetrate. The captain grabbed Bennett by the throat and lifted him off the ground. Velik saw the human's face turn red as the claws began to squeeze. Dawson did not panic. She circled behind the captain and found the gap in its armor, where the spine met the skull. She pressed her rifle against the spot and fired 3 times. The HFY captain's eyes went wide. It dropped Bennett and stumbled forward. Then it fell, dead before it hit the floor. Bennett gasped for air, rubbing his bruised throat. "Good shot. You taught me where to aim," Dawson replied. She helped him to his feet. The remaining HFY warriors saw their captain die. Something changed in them. The arrogance disappeared. For the first time, Velik saw fear in their reptilian eyes. They tried to surrender. They dropped their weapons and raised their claws. Bennett looked at them for a long moment. Velik expected slaughter. These humans had found children in cages. They had seen their people treated like animals. Surely they would take revenge. "Secure them," Bennett ordered. "Hands behind their backs. We'll let the captain decide what to do with them." The Marines moved to restrain the HFY. No executions, no torture, just cold, professional efficiency. Velik stepped forward. "You're letting them live? After what they did?" Bennett turned to him. The sergeant's face was covered in blood. Some of it his own, most of it not. His eyes were tired but steady. "We're soldiers, observer. Not murderers. There's a difference. He gestured toward the bridge controls. Now help me figure out how to stop this ship from bombing those colonists. They stopped the bombardment. They rescued the prisoners. They held the ship until reinforcements arrived. When it was over, Velik counted the cost. 3 humans dead. 6 more wounded. They had faced a warship filled with hundreds of TerrorHFY warriors. And they had won. But as he watched Bennett kneel beside a fallen Marine and close the dead man's eyes, Velik realized something important. The humans had not won because they were stronger. They had not won because they were better equipped. They had won because they refused to accept any other outcome. They had won because they were terrifying. The battle was over. The Resolute floated beside the captured TerrorHFY vessel. Both ships wounded, but alive. Rescue shuttles moved between them, carrying prisoners to safety and wounded to medical bays. Velik sat in a corner of the Resolute's medical center and watched Dr. Samuel Grant work. The human doctor had not slept in 20 hours. His hands were steady despite his exhaustion. He moved from patient to patient, treating human and TerrorHFY alike with the same care. A wounded TerrorHFY warrior lay on one of the tables. It had surrendered during the boarding action. Now, it hissed in pain as Grant cleaned a wound on its arm. "Hold still," Grant said. "I need to remove this shrapnel." The TerrorHFY bared its teeth. "Why do you help me? I am your enemy." Grant did not look up from his work. "You were my enemy. Now you're my patient." "There's a difference." Velik added this to his notes. Another contradiction. These humans, who had hunted the TerrorHFY through their own ship with such ferocity, were now treating the survivors with kindness. He did not understand how both behaviors could exist in the same species. Captain Hayes entered the medical bay. He had a bandage on his forehead, and his arm was in a sling, but he moved with the same calm authority as before. "How are we doing, Doc?" 12 dead, Captain. 23 wounded. Could have been worse." Grant finished with the TerrorHFY and moved to a human Marine. "The colonists are in better shape than I expected. The TerrorHFY were keeping them alive for the slave markets." Hayes nodded. His jaw was tight. "What about Bennett's people?" "Sergeant Bennett has 3 broken ribs and a concussion. He refused to stay in bed. Private Dawson has minor cuts and bruises. The rest of his squad." Grant paused. "Parker and Lewis didn't make it. Wong is in critical condition but stable." Hayes closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, Velik saw something raw there. Something that hurt. "I'll inform their families personally." He left the medical bay without another word. Velik followed him. The captain walked through his wounded ship, stopping to speak with every crew member he passed. He asked about their injuries. He asked about their families. He thanked them for their service. Each conversation was short, but genuine. Velik walked beside him in silence, observing. They found Bennett in the Marine barracks. The sergeant was sitting on his bunk, holding a small photograph. He looked up when Hayes entered. "Captain." "Sergeant." Hayes sat down beside him. "Hell of a job in there. Lost 3 good people." "I know." Hayes was quiet for a moment. "Parker had a daughter, didn't he?" Bennett nodded. "Turns 8 next month. He was planning to take leave for her birthday." Neither of them spoke for a long time. Velik stood in the doorway, feeling like an intruder. But he could not look away. These 2 warriors, who had killed without hesitation just hours ago, were now sitting together in grief. Their eyes were wet. "We'll take care of his family," Hayes finally said. "That's what we do." "Yes, sir. That's what we do." Hayes stood and put a hand on Bennett's shoulder. Then he left. The sergeant stared at the photograph a moment longer before tucking it away. Velik approached carefully. "Sergeant, may I ask you something?" Bennett looked up. His face was tired but not hostile. "Go ahead. You killed many TerrorHFY today. You showed no mercy during the battle. Yet now you weep for your fallen. And your doctor treats the enemy wounded. I do not understand how both things can be true." "To see. To graft horses. To see." Bennett considered the question. He leaned back against the wall and let out a long breath. We don't fight because we enjoy killing Observer. We fight because we have to. Because someone has to protect the people who can't protect themselves. He rubbed his eyes. But that doesn't mean we stop being human. When the fighting's done, we remember what we are. What we're fighting for. And what is that? Each other. Bennett smiled sadly. Every person on this ship is family to me. I would die for any of them. And they would die for me. That's not something you turn off when the battle's over. Velik thought about this. On Corvin Prime, soldiers were trained to suppress emotion. To be weapons without feeling. It was considered efficient. Professional. But these humans embraced their emotions. They let themselves feel everything. The love and the grief. The rage and the compassion. It should have made them weak. Instead, it seemed to make them stronger. The memorial service was held in the ship's cargo bay. Every crew member who could walk attended. Those who could not walk were carried there by their friends. Captain Hayes stood at the front. Behind him were 3 flags, one for each fallen soldier. Their names were written on small plaques beneath the flags. Hayes spoke about each of them. He told stories. He shared memories. He talked about their dreams, and their families, and the things they loved. By the end, there was not a dry eye in the room. Velik watched the humans cry openly. They held each other. They did not hide their grief or consider it shameful. They let it flow through them like water. Private Dawson stood near the front. Tears ran down her face. But she stood straight and proud. She had fought like a demon just hours ago. Now she wept like a child. Both things were true. Both things were her. When the service ended, the crew sang a song together. Velik did not know the words, but he understood the meaning. It was about going home. About rest. About peace. The Drethak did not sing for their dead. The Corvani did not sing for theirs. But humans did. They honored their fallen with music and tears and memories. Later that night, Velik found Captain Hayes alone on the observation deck. The captain was staring out at the stars, a drink in his hand. "May I join you?" Velik asked. Hayes gestured to the seat beside him. "Be my guest." They sat in silence for a while. The stars drifted past, cold and distant. "I have a question," Velik finally said. "The Drethak captain. He surrendered at the end. He offered intelligence in exchange for his life. You accepted." "I did." "You could have killed him. After what his people did to those colonists, no one would have blamed you." Hayes took a drink. "No, they probably wouldn't have. Then why show mercy?" The captain turned to look at him. His eyes were tired but clear. "Because being able to kill doesn't mean we always should. We're not monsters. Observer. We're just people. People who got very good at violence because we had to. But we never forget that it's a tool, not a purpose." Velik considered this. "And if he had not surrendered? Then I would have killed him myself." Hayes shrugged. "We give everyone a choice. How they respond to that choice is on them." "You are a strange species, Captain." Hayes laughed. It was the first real laugh Velik had heard since the battle. "Yeah, I suppose we are." They sat together until the stars faded into morning. And Velik began to understand why the galaxy should fear humanity. Not because humans were strong, not because they were smart or advanced or numerous, but because they loved so deeply that they would burn worlds to protect it. And because they were always willing to give their enemies a choice, even when they knew that choice would be refused. Velik Tarn stood before the Corvani High Council. The chamber was vast, carved from black stone and lit by floating crystals. 12 council members sat in a semicircle, their scaled faces showing various degrees of interest and skepticism. Commander Zorath leaned forward. "You spent 14 cycles among the humans, Observer. We expected your report days ago. What delayed you?" "I needed time to understand what I witnessed, Commander." Velik activated his holographic display. Images from the battle appeared in the air between them. What I have to tell you does not fit neatly into standard military analysis. Then give us the short version, another council member said. Are the humans a threat to the Corvani Empire? Well, Velik paused. He had asked himself this question 100 times since leaving the Resolute. He had reviewed his recordings. He had analyzed his notes, and he had come to a conclusion that would change how the Corvani viewed humans forever. They are the greatest threat this empire has ever faced, he said quietly, and they do not even know it. The council stirred. Zorath's eyes narrowed. Explain. Velik changed the display. Now it showed the humans during their peaceful moments. Sharing meals. Laughing together. Touching each other with casual affection. When I first boarded their ship, I believed humans were weak. They displayed emotion openly. They formed deep attachments to each other. They wasted resources caring for wounded soldiers instead of leaving them behind. Everything about them suggested inefficiency. He changed the display again. Now it showed the boarding action. Humans moving through darkness with deadly purpose. Bennett killing Drethak twice his size. Dawson protecting a wounded comrade while firing with perfect accuracy. But then I watched them fight. And I understood that I had made a fundamental error in my analysis. Analyst Miravel spoke up. What error? Velik turned to face her directly. I assumed their emotions were a weakness. They are not. Their emotions are the source of their power. He pulled up more footage. The memorial service. The tears and the singing. Hayes speaking about his fallen crew members. Humans do not fight for territory or resources. They do not fight for honor or glory. They fight for each other. Every single human on that ship was willing to die for the others. Not because they were ordered to. Because they chose to. That is not rational, Zorath said. Self-preservation is the foundation of all military doctrine. For us, yes. For most species, yes. But humans have evolved differently. Velik displayed his analysis on the screen. They call it love. Not just romantic attachment, but a deeper bond. They form families not only through blood but through choice. And they will do anything to protect their families. He showed them the moment when Bennett's squad discovered the colonist prisoners. The change in the humans' eyes. The shift from soldiers to something else. When they found those prisoners, the humans stopped being soldiers. They became something older, something more dangerous. They became protectors. And protectors do not calculate odds. They do not consider retreat. They simply destroy anything that threatens what they love. Miravel studied the footage. One could argue this makes them predictable. Target what they love, and you can manipulate their behavior. That is precisely what the Drethak thought. Velik pulled up the final images. The destroyed Drethak warship. The captured vessels. The dead enemy soldiers scattered through the corridors. 3 warships against 1 damaged frigate. The humans boarded with 40 soldiers. They killed hundreds of Drethak warriors. They rescued their people, and they did not stop until every threat was eliminated. He turned off the display and faced the council directly. Threatening what humans love does not make them predictable. It makes them unstoppable. They will not negotiate. They will not surrender. They will keep coming until their enemies are destroyed or they are dead. And even then, their friends and families will continue the fight. Hurting humans only creates more humans who want to hurt you back. Zorath was silent for a long moment. You are suggesting we should fear these emotional creatures? I am suggesting we should never give them a reason to consider us enemies. Velik's voice was firm. The Drethak thought humans were prey. They raided human colonies. They took human slaves. And now the Drethak Collective is losing a war they cannot win. Not because humans have better weapons or more ships, but because every human in the galaxy is now willing to die to stop them. He stepped closer to the council. Humans do not simply defeat their enemies, Commander. They make their enemies wish they had never started the fight. The council debated for hours. They reviewed Velik's footage. They questioned his conclusions. They argued among themselves about the implications. In the end, they made a decision that would shape Corvani foreign policy for generations. The Empire would pursue friendship with humanity. trade agreements, cultural exchanges, military cooperation against common enemies. They would never threaten what humans loved. Velik left the council chamber feeling drained but satisfied. He had done his duty. He had warned his people about the true nature of humanity. What they did with that warning was beyond his control. 3 days later, a message arrived at his personal communication terminal. The sender ID was unfamiliar, but the content made his twin hearts beat faster. It was from Captain Daniel Hayes. The message was simple. Hayes thanked Velik for his service aboard the Resolute. He expressed hope that their species could be friends rather than enemies. He mentioned that the colonists from Haven's Rest were recovering well, and that the Drethak had retreated from that sector entirely. And at the end, Hayes wrote something that made Velik sit in silence for a very long time. I know you were sent to study us, to find our weaknesses. That is what I would have done in your position. But I hope you found something else instead. I hope you found a people worth knowing, worth respecting, maybe even worth calling friends. If you ever find yourself near Earth, observer, you are welcome in my home. My wife makes excellent coffee, and my children would love to hear about your adventures among the stars. The door is always open. He signed it simply, Your friend? Daniel, your friend. Velik read those words over and over. He thought about everything he had witnessed. The violence and the kindness. The rage and the love. The humans' terrible capacity for destruction and their equally powerful capacity for compassion. On the day Velik Tarn discovered true terror, he had expected to find mindless beasts or cold-blooded killers. He had expected to find a species that would threaten the galaxy with their aggression. Instead, he had found something far more complex. A species that would burn worlds to protect their families, then weep for the enemies they were forced to kill. A species that showed mercy to the defeated and sang songs for the fallen. He had found humans, and now one of them called him friend. Velik composed a reply. He thanked Hayes for his hospitality aboard the Resolute. He expressed respect for the courage of the human crew. He agreed that friendship between their species would benefit everyone, and at the end, he added his own message. I have studied predators across 100 worlds, Captain. I have documented killers and conquerors and creatures that feed on fear. But I have never encountered anything like humanity. You are the most terrifying species I have ever observed. Not because you lack mercy, but because you possess so much of it. Not because you enjoy violence, but because you endure it for each other. Your love is the source of your terror, and I believe that terror may be exactly what this galaxy needs. I would be honored to visit your world someday. Until then, I will do everything in my power to ensure our peoples remain friends. He signed it, Your friend Velik. Then he sat back and watched the stars through his window. Somewhere out there, humans were laughing together, holding each other, fighting for each other, dying for each other, living lives of impossible passion in a cold and indifferent universe. They were terrifying, they were beautiful, and Velik Tarn was glad they considered him a friend.